Good day, everyone. Today we are presenting our report about World Trade and Overview. But before we start, let me introduce myself. I am Carmela Cayetano, an Econ 3A student.
And I am Crizelda Agua from Business Economics 3A.
Learning Goals. After reading this chapter, you will be able to describe how the value of trade between any two countries depends on the size of these countries' economies and explain the reason for that relationship. Discuss how distance and borders reduce trade. Describe how the share of international production that is traded has fluctuated over time and why there have been two ages of globalization. Explain how the mix of goods and services that are traded internationally has changed over time. Introduction. In 2015, the world as a whole produced goods and services worth $74 trillion. At current prices, of this total, about 0% was sold across national borders. World trade in goods and services exceeded $21 trillion. We will begin by describing who trades with whom. An empirical relationship known as the gravity model helps to make sense of the value of trade between any pair of countries and shed light on the impediments that continue to limit international trade even in today's global economy. First, let us know what is gravity model. Gravity model relates the trade between any two countries to the sizes of their economies. Using the gravity model also reveals the strong effects of distance and international borders, even friendly borders like that between United States and Canada, in discouraging trade. Figure 2-1 shows the total value of trade in goods exports plus imports between the United States and its top 15 trading partners in 2015. Taken together, these 15 countries accounted for 75% of the value of U.S. trade in that year. The graph shows the top 15 traders in the U.S. trade with major partners. Size matters, the gravity model. 3 of the top 15 U.S. trading partners are European nations: Germany, the United Kingdom, and France. Why does the United States trade more heavily with these 3 European countries than with others? The answer is that these are the 3 largest European economies that have the highest value of gross domestic product, which measures the total value of all goods and services produced in an economy. There is a strong empirical relationship between the size of a country's economy and the volume of both its import and exports. Looking at the world trade as a whole, economists have found that an equation of the following form predicts the volume of trade between any two countries fairly accurately. In computing the volume of trade between any two countries, the equation used is P sub ij is equal to A times Y sub ij multiplied by Y sub ij divided by P sub ij, where A is a constant term. P sub ij is the value of trade between country I and country J, or the currency of both country I and J. Yi is country's GDP, or the GDP total value of trade in import of exports of the two countries. Then D sub ij is the distance between the two countries. The value of trade between any two countries is proportional, other things equal, to the product of the two countries' GDPs and diminishes with the distance between the two countries. The reason for the name is the analogy to Newton's law of gravity. Just as the gravitational attraction between any two objects is proportional to the product of their masses and diminishes with distance, the trade between any two countries is, other things equal, proportional to the product of their GDPs and diminishes with distance. So why the gravity model related to Newton's law of gravity? Simply because they have significance in terms of attraction between any two objects. Why does the gravity model work? Broadly speaking, large economies tend to spend large amounts on imports because they have large incomes. They also tend to attract large shares of others countries' spending because they produce a wide range of products. Large economies tends to import large amount of products, and they can also produce a wide range of products. And then by that they can also earn a large incomes. Using the gravity model, looking for anomalies. One of the principal uses of gravity models is that they help us to identify anomalies in trade. Indeed, when trade between two countries is either much more or much less than the gravity model predicts, economists search for the explanation. Netherlands, Belgium, and Ireland trade considerably more with the United States than a gravity model have predicted. Why might this be the case? For Ireland, the answer lies partly in cultural affinity. Not only does Ireland share a language with the United States, but tens of millions Americans are descended from Irish immigrants. Beyond this consideration, Ireland plays a special role as a host to many US-based corporations. In the case of both Netherlands and Belgium, geography and transport costs probably explain their large trade with the United States. Both countries are located near the mouth of the Rhine, Western Europe's longest river, which runs past the Ruhr, Germany's industrial heartland. So the Netherlands and Belgium have traditionally been the point of the entry to much of northwestern Europe. Rotterdam in the Netherlands is the most important port in Europe, as measured by the tonnage handled, and Antwerp in Belgium ranks in second. The large trade of Belgium and Netherlands suggests, in other words, an important role of transport costs and geography in determining the volume of trade. The importance of this factor is clear when we turn to a broader example of trade data. Impediments to trade, distance, barriers, and borders. Figure 2-3 shows U.S. trade as a percentage of a total trade with Western Europe in 2012 versus GDP as a percentage of the region's total GDP, but adds two or more countries, Canada and Mexico. As you can see, the two neighbors of the United States do a lot more trade with the United States than European economies of equal size. In fact, Canada, whose economy is roughly the same size as Spain's, trade as much with the United States as all of Europe does. The changing pattern of a world trade. World trade is a moving target. The direction and composition of world trade is quite different today from what it was a generation ago, and even more different from what it was a century ago. Let's look at some of the main trends. Why does the United States do so much more trade with its North American neighbors than with its European partners? One main reason is the simple fact that Canada and Mexico are much closer. All estimated gravity models shows a strong negative effect of distance on international trade Typical estimate says that a 1% increase in the distance between two countries is associated with a fall of 0.7 to 1% in the trade between those countries. Economists also believes that less tangible factors plays a crucial role. Trade tends to be intense when countries have close personal contact, and this contact tends to diminish when distances are large.
Has the world gotten smaller? In popular discussions of the world economy, one often encounters statements that modern transportation and communications have abolished distance, so that the world has become a small place. Has the process of transportation and communication made the world smaller? Has the world gotten smaller when it comes to trading? It is now easy to trade internationally. Unlike before, you need to take a lot of process before you trade. Has the progress of transportation and communication made the world smaller? The answer is yes. But history also shows that political forces can outweigh the effects of technology. The world got smaller between 1840 and 1914, but it got bigger again for much of the 20th century. There is a sudden change in international trade. It expanded fast, but this became slower in the 20th century. In 1919, the great economist John Maynard Keynes described the results of that surge of globalization. What an extraordinary episode in the economic progress of man that age was, which came to an end in August 1914. The inhabitant of London could order by telephone, sipping his morning tea in bed, the various products of the whole earth in such quantity as he might see fit and reasonably expect their early delivery upon his doorstep. Through the internet, we can now order on different platforms with cheap prices and discounts. Notice, however, Keynes' statement that the age came to an end in 1914. In fact, two subsequent world wars, the Great Depression of 1930s and widespread protectionism, did a great deal to depress the world trade. Since 1970, world trade as a share of world GDP has risen to unprecedented heights. Much of this rise in the value of world trade reflects the so-called vertical disintegration of production. Before a product reaches the hands of consumers, it often goes through many production stages in different countries. Vertical disintegration is when the x-axis in the graph is called outside cost, which is buying raw materials, but when the company decides to provide their own raw materials, but it is more costly within the organization. What do we trade? When countries trade, what do they trade? For the world as a whole, the main answer is that they ship manufactured goods such as automobiles, computers, and clothing to each other. These are the priorities of the countries to trade. Meanwhile, service exports include traditional transportation fees charged by airlines and shipping companies, insurance fees received from foreigners, and spending by foreign tourists. Figure 2 to 5 shows the percentage breakdown of world exports in 2008. Manufactured goods of all kinds make the lion's share of world trade. Most of the value of mining goods consists of oil and fuels. Trade in agricultural products, although crucial in feeding many countries, accounts for only a small fraction of the value of modern world trade. The current picture, in which manufactured goods dominate world trade, is relatively new. In the past, primary products, agricultural and mining goods played a much more important role in world trade. Example of mining products are oil and gasoline. In the early 20th century Britain, While it overwhelmingly exported manufactured goods and manufactures mainly imported primary products, today manufactured goods dominate both sides of its trade. Meanwhile, the United States has gone from a trade pattern in which primary products were more important than manufactured goods on both sides to one in which manufactured goods dominate on both sides. United States products are being patronized more than primary products or needs because of technology. Figure 2 to 6 shows the shares of agricultural products and manufactured goods in developing country exports from 1960 to 2001. As you can see, the exports of developing countries have shifted to manufacturers while drifting in agricultural. Service offshoring. When a service previously done within a country is shifted to a foreign location, the change is known as service offshoring, or sometimes known as service outsourcing. Producers must decide whether they should set up a foreign subsidiary to provide those services, or operate as a multinational firm, or outsource those services to another firm.
Summary. The gravity model relates the trade between any two countries to the sizes of their economies. Using the gravity model also reveals the strong effect of distance and international borders. Number 2. International trade is at record levels relative to the size of the world economy. Thanks to the falling cost of transportation and communications. However, trade has not grown in a straight line. The world was highly integrated in 1914, but trade was greatly reduced by economic depression, protectionism, and war, and took decades to recover.
Manufactured goods dominate modern trade today. In the past, however, primary products were much more important than they are now. Recently, trade in services has become increasingly important. Developing countries, in particular, have shifted from being mainly exporters of primary products to being mainly exporters of manufactured products. And that ends our discussion. The next topic is labor productivity that will be discussed by Betty May Ibita, Ivy Nemi, and Jennifer Trinidad.